everyone. I'm Rick Kaplan, and my guest today is Dr. David Shulkin, former U.S. Secretary of Veteran Affairs and hospital CEO, as well as he worked under President Trump as well as President Obama. And we also have Philip Hauserman. He's the Vice President of Public Relations Director for Crisis Communications for the Castle Group. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Great.
Good.
Well, we got so much to talk about. There's so much going on with this. What I think we'll start with is Dr. Shulkin. You probably never have seen anything like this. You probably understand what's going on, but you've never seen anything like this.
Well, I don't think many people have. Pandemics generally happen 3 to 4 times every 100 years. We've had 4 pandemics in the last 100 years, but for each generation, they generally experience a pandemic. So for our generation, this is a very unusual and life-altering experience.
Businesses have been really terribly affected by this because everything has stopped pretty much. So what do they have to consider to open up? Because that's everyone's question right now, because there's so much lost income, so there's properties that are closed down for 2 months now. So tenants are kind of nervous about paying their rents and things of that nature. So everyone wants to know, how long do you think this should go, and how should we go about opening up again?
Well, there's no doubt that the economic pressures are significant, but this is not going to be a matter of just simply turning on a switch and we're going to return to life as it was before the COVID crisis. You need to be able to think about this in a thoughtful way and with a primary assurance of ensuring the safety of both your staff and your customers and the people that you serve in your organizations. So I think that this needs to be done much like anything else that is a life-changing event. This needs to be a comprehensive, thoughtful plan. And there are about 10 elements to opening up a workplace or opening up an organization or a commercial space that a thoughtful business owner needs to go through to think about doing this safely. And that's some of the work that we've begun to now help organizations with, how you think through using the best medical science, using the evidence that we're aware of today to be able to do this as safely as possible.
So that's where Philip comes in, because, as far as communicating with your employees as well as your clients, how would you suggest people start doing that?
Well, yeah, I mean, I think you hear Dr. Shulkin, you need a comprehensive plan. I think any business owner can come up with a plan, but what we found in our interactions with clients is that this plan lacked medical and scientific guidance. And that's where Dr. Shulkin and Dr. Jaff come in. And, what is your plan as it relates to safety protocols, sanitation guidelines, personal hygiene, social distancing, whether it's within a store? How are you communicating that to your employees and your managers, who are your best ambassadors? Because if they don't feel safe, then you can sure bet the customers aren't going to feel safe.
So now you have the issue of what do you consider safe? How do you make your facility safe? That's an unanswered question.
Well, I think that we do know the elements of that. I think that every business owner needs to think about doing a risk stratification of their employees to see at what level of risk they're at, given their job role and given their individual circumstances. I think, as Philip said, we need to understand how to do an effective screening program. If there are physical components to that, like temperature, as well as clinical questions, how one thinks about using the current testing capabilities that are there today, the antigen, the antibody tests, to do that effectively. Training of employees that are needed to be in a safe environment and how to deal with customers, the policies and procedures that, again, Philip talked about in terms of social distancing and the facility issues in terms of physical separation and air filtration and hygiene places to be able to make sure that you can safely disinfect yourself. And then a whole series of issues related to ongoing changes, because every day we're learning something different about this virus. The epidemiology is changing, the science is changing. And finally, the communication issues. How do you constantly update your employees and your customers to assure them that you are putting their safety as a primary concern? And how do you address the information that they're getting to make sure that they're getting the best evidence-based information and not responding to things that are out there on the internet or coming from different sources that frankly are just not accurate?
Yeah, and that's very confusing to a lot of people, because there are so many mixed messages. No one really knows what's right, what's wrong. Is there one specific place people could go to try to find the real message that should be out there?
Well, I think that there are sources that people should have greater trust in than other places. And certainly a lot of our governmental organizations, I think, have done a good job of making sure that they promote safe and accurate information. The problem is, as a business owner, that's really the floor and where you should be. That's the minimum level of safety and standards. But when you open up a business and you want to regain the confidence of your staff and your customers, you don't want to be operating from the floor. So you want to be doing those extra efforts, such as the things that we've talked about, and communication and customizing the standards to your particular place of work. And that's where you do need experts helping you decide what makes sense and what doesn't make sense, because you don't want to be spending your effort and your money on issues that frankly aren't going to make a difference or waste money.
So that's where Philip would come in, because he has to get that message out to.
And I would say that that message needs to be authoritative, it needs to be confident, it needs to be compassionate. And you need to use multiple mediums. We're all inundated with information right now. You don't really know where to turn, what's right. The emails that we're getting from companies are, pages long. You can get the message across faster using bulleted language. You've got email, you've got video if you choose to do video, you've got signage in your business, and you've also got your employees. And I think, again, it goes back to training your employees and your staff. And if they're comfortable with the measures that you're taking, whether it's mask or social distancing or disinfecting, if they're confident in what you're doing in the place of, if they're in their own place of employment, then that shines through to the customers in the store.
Now, obviously, an office where you have the same people that are most likely coming there every day, so it's not new people coming in, as opposed to like a retail operation or a restaurant. There's probably going to be different standards for both, I would think. Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure how.
No, but this is the challenge in dealing with this virus, is that while you may have the same people coming to work every day, after they leave work, they can have contact with literally dozens of different people, so that by the next day that you come into work with a dozen people at work who have each seen a dozen people after work, you're now dealing with hundreds of new contacts. And so therefore you have to have continuous and appropriate ability to do surveillance and monitoring of the situation to assure safety. And you have to also have a contact tracing program in place, because what do you do if one of your employees develops symptoms or gets sick? So you have to have an appropriate way of knowing who they've had contact with and doing appropriate notifications. So this is uncharted territory. This is complex. You can see how one could, sort of go on forever about all the endless possibilities. So that's where you do need the right type of consultative assistance to make the right choices, to focus a program where it's going to have the biggest difference, where the science suggests that it should be, and to assure people that you're doing the very best that you can to look after their safety.
Now, I'm sure this must be new companies, or there could have been even existing companies that have they've have that the way of setting up how you can conduct all these processes. You know, like either a cleaning company or a company that knows how to scan your employees or scan customers that walking through your retail operation. Is that a good suggestion to have a company like that?
Well, my suggestion is, you know, you don't want to have 10 different companies running a program for you, because it's going to be fragmented and there may be conflicting approaches that frankly don't work well together. So you want to have a coordinated, integrated approach towards all of these issues, towards your policies and procedures, towards your screening, towards your cleaning, towards your communications. Many companies, as you said, that had been in other businesses now all of a sudden overnight have become COVID-19 businesses with new products. And some of them are good, but unfortunately a lot aren't good and don't have good scientific information. I was speaking to a major company that's trying to offer services to businesses now to help them open up, and their program relies solely upon using temperature as a screening procedure. And unfortunately, they clearly have no medical advice or scientific advice in recommending this, because it's an inappropriate recommendation. Temperature screening picks up less than 20% of anybody who may be with the infection. And that doesn't even include the 50% of people that are asymptomatic who are carriers of the infection. So if you're going to take the trouble to put a screening program in place, you might as well do it based on science and one that's going to work, and not one that's just going to waste your money and make you feel good.
So someone that's asymptomatic probably is not going to show a temperature.
No, they will not, by definition.
So you don't know. Pretty much anyone could be carrying this.
Well, that's the role. That's the role for asking the right questions about exposure and using testing. And that's why I think almost every national expert has said that the safest way that we can open up this country is through a testing strategy. I happen to believe we should have a national testing strategy, but the way it's being rolled out right now is a statewide testing strategy, and that's okay, other than we're going to have 50 different approaches. So if you're a company who has locations in several states, right now it's a pretty confusing picture about what you do. So that's why I think I've said the government is really a floor, and companies need to have their own strategies that make sense to them, that are evidence-based. And so, but testing must be part of a strategy to assure the safety of both the staff and the customers, because up to 50% of people will be asymptomatic.
So do you think this antibody testing is going to be something that would be a standard practice for, like, I would think companies would want to do that to all their employees on a regular basis?
I think it's a great example of why this is such a confusing picture. Just today, the American Medical Association has come out with cautions about how to use antibody testing and asking for clarification on how people should be using this. That some of the antibody testing that's entering the commercial market is not good technology and offering results that you may not be able to rely upon. So this is a good example of where we're going to see the story on antibody testing change over time, maybe even the next couple of weeks, including a better understanding of whether antibodies offer immunity against future infection. And so I do believe that antibody testing will be an important part of this. It is with most other infectious diseases. As you know, when you go to school, you need to show evidence of either antibody protection or vaccination before you can let your child into school. And I think it's going to be similar in the workplace. But today, the story is evolving, and one needs to be able to have experts help them sort out the data so that they don't go and invest in testing that frankly is not good technology and maybe providing them with bad information.
Now, I think about how some employees are going to feel, once things are reopening. Are they, because this is affecting a lot more than just, people's health as far as, their physical health. I mean, mental health. People have been cooped up in their residence for 2 months now, and still not getting that, oh, it's clear to go, even when it's opened up. So if a company opens up, and this might be a good question for you, Philip, how are those people, how are those companies going to deal with the employee that's afraid to go into that, or customers that are afraid to go into a restaurant or a retail store?
Yeah, I think, it goes back to Dr. Shulkin talked about a comprehensive plan, and communications wise, your communications are only as good as your message, and your message is only as good as the information that you have to create that message. And we could send numerous emails, numerous videos, newsletters, as much as you want, but if it's not backed by science and has the medical information, it's not going to get across the right message. I mean, only so many times you can send a compassionate or empathetic note to your employees and say, we're welcoming you back to the workplace. But what you need to be able to say is, we're welcoming you back to the workplace, and here are all the steps that we're taking to ensure your safety. And here are all the resources that we have that are available to you, not just medical information, but mental health information as well. And, communicating it regularly, consistently, and with fact-based, scientific information. I mean, that to me, if I was an employee coming back into a workplace, I would want to see those things on a very consistent and regular basis, and only then would I feel comfortable and going back to my desk or my space.
So now you have everyone wearing face masks. Do you think that's going to be a norm going forward? And
I do. I think that until we have a better understanding of why this virus is so contagious, that you have to assume that there is spread, not only through direct contact and through droplets that can be left on surfaces, but that there is a component of an aerosolized aspect of spread of contagion. And so in order to assure the best safety, people are going to need to have coverings over their faces. And even if you look in Asia today, where the number of infections have dropped significantly, almost everybody continues to wear face coverings and masks. And so I think that will be a good practice, unless people can be assured that everybody in their nearby location is virus free, and you can do that through testing and screening procedures.
Now, as we're coming towards the summer, some have said that this virus is going to drop way down, or even not even be an issue because of the heat and the high humidity. It doesn't survive. Whether that's true or not, I'm not sure, but I'm not a doctor. I just play one on TV sometimes. But is this going to be something that's everyone's going to get to the summer, and they're going to see that, and then in the fall maybe jump up again?
Well, I think when the virus first became known about, it was thought that this might act very similar to influenza, where you do see it going away once the weather starts getting warmer. Unfortunately, in this virus, we have seen outbreaks in South America. We've seen outbreaks in the Middle East, and this virus does not appear to be acting the same way. So that I do not believe that there's necessarily going to be a dissipation of the virus just because it's getting warmer. On the other hand, we are now seeing very positive trends towards the virus slowing, we still are seeing growth. We're at about a 2.8% growth, 20,000 new cases each day, but the rate of growth is slowing, so that during the summer, if we continue to see the same pattern, we will see a dramatic improvement in the number of infections, and it will appear like it is going away, corresponding with summer months. What we do know is that almost every pandemic that we've studied does have a second wave. Many have third and fourth waves that happen about 3 or 4 months after you think the virus is now going away. So that's why you're hearing many of the experts predicting that the fall, maybe the late fall, is going to be a very tough period again if this virus continues to act the way that we believe it is now acting.
So basically, this is really not going away. This is going to be part of our normal day-to-day life again, going forward.
The virus will not disappear from the environment. We are going to be remaining with the virus until one of two things happen: until enough people get infected and recover and develop immunity, and that's called herd immunity, where enough of us have been exposed that this doesn't impact us in large outbreaks the way that we've seen. Or secondly, until there's a vaccine. Just today, we heard of yet another company entering a clinical trial, this one in Germany, a division of Pfizer, that has begun testing in phase 1. So we are seeing a number of active companies moving pretty quickly on vaccine development. And I happen to believe that we will have a vaccine sooner than many of the experts project, although it's never been done before. So we're using new technology to do this. So we are likely, though, before a vaccine could be commercially produced and distributed and given to millions of people that are going to need it, we are likely to be at least with this virus in the situation that we're in for the next 2 years, let's say. And that will require us to take the types of steps we're talking about with you today, including continued social distancing.
Now, my concern is retail in restaurants and bars, because, once this opens up, people that have been cooped up they're going to be anxious to get out. They're going to want to go into a bar. They're going to want to go into a restaurant, crowded parks and things like that. I don't know how they can restrict all that, or without keeping some kind of stay-at-home type rule in place.
Well, I do believe that businesses are going to need to get creative, and this is the type of work that we're doing to help them do this. So it may be that the restaurants that are successful look very different than the restaurants that we're used to. They may have much more physical separation between tables. That means using things like plexiglass, having different spacing, certainly having different disinfection protocols, and requiring that people, use proper hygiene and masks when appropriate. Now, obviously, you can't use a mask and eat at the same time, but there are ways that I think restaurants can assure their customers that they are being safer than what we normally have seen in restaurants. So that would just be one example, but this is going to require that people have these thoughtful, comprehensive plans that we've been talking about.
And I would add to that, flexibility is key. Restaurants are now selling groceries. They're doing different things to stay afloat. But I think, you hear Dr. Shulkin talk, and you have to always consider the short and long term risk. And, I think, over the next couple of months, restaurants, other establishments may abide by the protocols and the sanitation guidelines and everything they've set forth. But then if they become complacent, that complacency may also lead into right when that second wave is coming. And you think about short and long-term risk. So short term is covered with all your protocols, but also think about long term, because if you don't implement any of these things, but nothing happens, you can be willing to bet, because they're already looking, there's possible legal repercussions if you didn't take the appropriate measures.
So everyone should be preparing, everyone should be preparing for a 2-year period, pretty much.
I think that's correct.
Because I don't see it ending by the end of this year, for sure.
And in some ways, I think that this has been obviously an eye-opening experience for almost everybody, that people understood that there were risks to businesses in cybersecurity, in climate issues, in economic issues, and now you need to add to that public health issues. And so this will be an ongoing issue that I think everybody's going to need to keep in mind. So I don't see this just as a 2-year issue. I see the ability to be able to identify, predict, and react quickly to other health issues as an ongoing business concern that will be with us forever.
Well, I think it did help with one issue, the climate issue, because our pollution levels had dropped way down. So that's a positive thing. Something.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And you know, it's hard to think about things that are positive with the tremendous toll that we've had in people dying and people's economic fortunes being ruined. But out of a pandemic, there are often major changes in the economics and the sociologic makeup, in the way that we think about things like healthcare delivery. And there are going to be some lessons learned in this, that we can make ourselves stronger and better going forward and more resilient. And I think it does take looking for those opportunities and using innovation and leadership to create the positive things out of something like this.
Yeah, I was talking with someone, and they said that, yeah, we're going to tell our grandkids. There used to be places we used to go to eat, and everyone would sit at tables. You know, they called them restaurants. That was way back then. So that's, you know, this is going to be remembered as a change, you know?
Well, look, we've seen this with retail. It wasn't through a health crisis. It was through a different way of doing business with the internet. And so Americans know how to adapt. And so things will be different. Yes, we will have places we can be together, we can socialize, we can eat. Will a restaurant in the future look different than the old restaurants? I think they will. But we're still going to find ways to be able to do the things that we need to do and to enjoy. And frankly, it's always been that way. It's always seemed like it's catastrophic. And, you know, we have found new and innovative and better ways of always creating our economies and our social interactions. So we're going to do that again.
So you're saying we're going to get through this and we're going to be even better?
I think so. I think that as long as you look back upon painful times as opportunities to learn lessons and to create stronger, more resilient types of economies and environments, you do end up getting better.
So, well, that's a positive. You know, it makes me feel more comfortable. You know, we have to bear this pain for a little time, and then, you know, we'll adapt, like
Right.
happened in the past. Well, I appreciate the information, and I appreciate you both coming on for the interview. Again, I want to introduce, well, I want to let you know who each of you are, and that's Dr. Shulkin. He's a former U.S. Secretary of Veteran Affairs and former hospital CEO. You're not still the CEO of a hospital?
No.
Right now, okay. And Philip Hauserman, Vice President and Public Relations Director of Crisis Communication for the Castle Group. I appreciate the information. I appreciate the interview. Both of you have a pleasant afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ray.
Thank you for watching today's interview. If you'd like to be a guest, a sponsor, or even advertise in the New England Real Estate Journal, you'll find our contact information in the description box below. You can also find all our social media platforms so you can follow us, and please subscribe to our YouTube channel.